touch points.
Well, thank you, Begonia, ever so much. That was really interesting, and I think it's opened up a lot of opportunity for discussion. So I know, Richard, you've been compiling some of the questions coming in, so maybe we could go to you to coordinate the Q&A session.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. If you could stop sharing, Begonia, just for a sec. There's not too many questions in the chat room, so we'll probably take questions as we go along. But the first one is, deposit scheme sounds like a great idea, but who will have the power to actually introduce them? Do you see sort of some cities introducing them, whereas their neighbours don't?
That's a very good question, and that hasn't been fleshed out in the bill. I think what they're trying to do first is, so who would have the power? So would it be a national thing, I guess the question is, or a local authority? I think the power is given to the Secretary of State at the moment, and he may delegate those powers. They want to put into place the separation of household waste in place first, to really understand what are the things that we can collect or not. I mean, we've shied away from the ban, really, which is of single-use plastic, which is really what I think we should have done. But let's see. The bill is not, it's still going through its stages. So let's see what we end up with. Richard, you're on mute.
Yes, thank you. I just had a message pop up. You'd have thought after 8 months I'd know how to unmute myself, wouldn't you? Thank you for that, Begonia. Next question is there anything in the likely to happen on building on the green belt?
Let me unmute myself. So I think there's a planning white paper going through at the moment, and the government hasn't yet published a statement on how that will work with the environment bill, because the environment bill does not cover planning.
I think the interference is actually coming from your microphone, Begonia. I don't know if it's sitting on something or doing something. No worries. I'm still unmuted, which is amazing. From Claire Martin, will the Scottish Government be following this framework and introducing their own local authority requirements? I'm guessing Claire is north of the border.
Yeah. So I think that that the biggest risk posed by this environment bill, for me, is the fragmentation of governments of environmental law across the UK. There's a real danger. Everyone's doing their own thing in terms of that they have devolved powers. The functions on environmental law are devolved to the various nations. So we are likely to see divergence across the UK. The government's tried to address this through the internal market bill, but we don't know where we're at the moment. So imagine the issue, we have certain standards for products in Scotland and different standards for that same product in England. How is that going to work? Do we have different recycling targets? It can cause a whole host of problems, and I haven't seen a coordinated solution to this yet.
Okay, thanks.
I think one of the key areas of this, Begonia, is we've been working in the water industry on a water efficiency label for all water using products, which we're told may be coming, but it's been delayed again. And one of the key things we're trying to do is join up. I've had conversations now with Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales to make sure that we're having a joined up approach with each of the regions, if you like, to actually approach their parliaments and actually take them through the journey, so that it's a supporting mechanism when it comes to DEFRA's door, that they can see the rest of the UK is supportive, and it helps unlock that potential.
Thanks, Ben.
I hear that, because I think that the resources will be stretched across all of the nations. I mean, DEFRA has gone back to the level of staff that it had 10 years ago. And so there's a lot of people working on this. But I fear some of the devolved administrations will struggle, so that will be very welcome. We of course haven't spoken about the elephant in the room, which is the beautiful Northern Ireland, and what's going to happen that in terms of trade and environmental standards. We just don't know yet.
Thanks, Begonia. Your presentation was perfect and we heard you beautifully, but something seems to have gone wrong with your microphone over the last few minutes. It sort of sounds like you're rattling something or your phone's going off next to it, but we can still hear you, so we'll carry on. The next question, I think, is a really critical one. What is a realistic timescale for getting all of this working and fully embedded in the UK through culture, operations? Are we talking months, years, decades? Will it happen in my lifetime? You're on mute, Begonia, sorry.
So I hope you can hear me a little bit better. I don't know what's happened. So a lot of the things in the bill, when it becomes an act, will be the Secretary of State has power too. So we are looking, I mean, the thing that becomes an environmental improvement plan straight away is the 25-year plan. We know there's not much flesh on the bone on that until we get the standards in 2022. That's when things, I think, will really start to kick in. But this is a long-term plan for the future of environmental law. And I suspect we will be working on this for the next 5 years.
Thanks, Begonia. I think we should open up the floor now. I can't see everybody. So if you do have a question, could you just quickly pop your name into the chat room and then we'll come through to you? No, I don't think we've got any more questions. So I'll pass back to you, Ben, if you could, as chair.
Okay. Well, it's been really fascinating to sort of see the areas that are sort of progressing and the way the government is approaching it. I think all of us are looking at it with mixed emotions. I think there's lots of opportunity, which is really positive to see, but there's also lots of nervousness about some of the things that might get removed or watered down. I guess we won't know until plans progress and we start to see, we come out the other side of Christmas and the New Year to see what the reality of Brexit brings. So I think it's very, very interesting times. Yeah. I found it really, very useful briefing, and I'm sure everyone on the seminar, the webinar today has found it very interesting too. In terms of our future program, do we want to talk about that, Richard, now at this point?
The next event takes place on the 27th of January, and it's called Hampshire Retrofit. We haven't actually published the full details yet, but the Eventbrite link is actually in the chat function. I think if Erin, if you could just pop it back in there again, then people could just log on so they've got a placeholder in their diary. The event is going to be run by Adam Goulden, who's the Chief Executive of the Environment Centre based in Southampton. Been working with businesses, citizens, the local authorities for many, many years. A great organisation, and Adam will be talking about all the retrofit opportunities and initiatives that will be taking place. So a little bit of time till we get to that one. We've got something called Christmas in the way and something else called Transition Period Ending. But yeah, so Erin, if you could pop it back in there, that'll be great. Oh, you have done. So the link is actually in the chat room now.
I've got a question actually for the audience. I wonder, those members of local authorities, how are they feeling about the Environment Bill and the extra responsibilities that it's putting on them and the extra regulator? And that goes for Environment Agency and Natural England too. Is there anyone from a local authority that would like to share their views? Okay.
Sorry, if you can't find the chat function, just unmute yourself and start talking, and then then you'll come onto the main screen. I know we've got a few local authority people here.
Guess it might be an uncomfortable question to answer. We would respect anonymity.
One of the things that I was going to mention was the fact that as a board, Future South is now starting work on preparing some information linked to the COP26 process that obviously the UK is hosting next November. I think one of the key things we're quite keen on as a board is that we show some regional identity and take forward some USPs in the UK context about what is really important about the South, because I think everyone thinks it's just a wealthy part of the country and there are more needy parts of the UK, and I think we need to, from a sustainability point of view, we need to get our act together a bit more. So we're trying to coordinate some of those activities. So one of those areas, for example, where we have a rich heritage but maybe not utilising it so effectively is the green building sector in terms of the use of timber, because obviously Sussex and Surrey have some of the highest rates of timber, woodland in the UK, and actually a lot of that is not sustainably managed and at the same time could provide low carbon construction materials. So that's one area we'll be putting into our sort of mini manifesto, if you like. So if anyone on the call is really interested, on the webinar today is really interested in this and they want to get in touch with us, then do come via the Future South website and give us your views. Okay, do we have any final questions? Did we answer the question from Claire Martin? Was that covered in the general devolved question? There was one about the Scottish Government following the framework.
I believe we have, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there is one more question here, which is what's going to happen to the environment in the next 5 years? Is there anything there to protect it?
Well, I mean, the whole bill is meant to protect the environment. The objective is to improve the environment. And there's going to be standards set against which to measure that.
So on that, Begonia, why would the government be resisting the amendments that are coming in to strengthen the environmental protections? Why do they keep voting against them? Food standards was a classic example. You know, why would they not be welcoming the additional strength that's being given to them?
Well, that's a very good question, and I have great concerns about the fact that there was the NFU and other bodies put forward an amendment to the agricultural bill where they asked for agricultural food standards to be embedded in legislation and a non-retroactivity clause, and the government fought this. And the government said we achieved this in other ways, and we're fully committed to high environmental standards. But for me, it is a concern because if you want to keep those standards, then why not embed them in legislation? You know, so you can't lower the standards. That's the key. The deal with the USA may require different food standards, or with other countries, we don't know. How is the government going to deal with that if there's no retroactivity clause in legislation? So there is a risk, so I share your concerns, yes.
And we do have probably a final question here from Katrine Williams. For Begonia, is this bill likely to be updated on a regular basis depending on the progress of the midterm targets?
No, What will be updated, Catherine, is the environmental improvement plan. And the Secretary of State and the OEP will be reporting to Parliament on whether the improvements set therein have been achieved or not on an annual basis. There are also interim targets, so you have the final target, but if you see that it's very difficult to achieve that target, you can break it down, say, actually, we need to do this quicker, so we're going to set a 5-year interim target. So that will always be under review, and that will always be under the environmental improvement plan. The act, the bill, when it becomes an act, will stay as it is. I mean, it'll be amended as and when it's needed, but you know, like we amend the Environment Protection Act 1990.
Thanks, Begonia. Actually, more questions coming through now. Katrine said, thank you for clarifying. Andrew Johnson, I keep reading about increased incidences of sewage and other water pollution incidents in rivers, etc. Is there a reason behind this?
I don't know. I think the water companies, I think Southern Water was fined a very large amount by Ofwat recently, maybe a year ago, for data inconsistencies as to sewage treatment and release of sewage. So I don't know why.
Maybe I can add to that as well, Begonia.
Yeah.
So you might then.
I think this question is around rivers, because there are a lot of people that are doing wild swimming in rivers, and rivers don't have the same blue flag style protection for bathing waters as they do for the sea or the coastline. So I think there is now a big campaign by a large number of groups around the country to get key areas of rivers protected under the same kind of designation, to make sure that when people go wild swimming, it's as equally as clean as if they're getting into the seas. And I think, you know, one of the things we have to recognise is how important EU law has been around making sure that we have clean beaches, and that's something that, again, the water industry, you know, is responding to more widely. But again, it's that level of protection again, and who's going to be enforcing these things going forward.
Why more pollution incidents? I mean, I wasn't aware that there were more pollution incidents. Is that something, Andrew, since lockdown that you've noticed?
Yeah. I mean, I suppose it was really just well, I work in the water industry, so perhaps it's now I'm noticing it more. But I have noticed there seem to be more reports of issues with water quality for various sort of reasons and other sort of pollutants. I suppose my concern was whether that was going to be worsened by I suppose sort of the legislative changes that are coming through, or if there was any sort of particular reason for that.
The bill, you know, reinforces the polluter pays principle.
Yeah.
You know, there will be standards for water quality, our own standards for water quality. At the moment, we will, you know, until 2022, we will keep the same quality, the same standards as set by the EU. You know, what's the percentage of rivers in the UK that are poor water quality? I mean, I want to say 80%, but 60%? I mean, there's a high proportion of rivers with poor water quality to start off with.
Yes.
But Andrew, I think you're seeing more focus on the importance of chalk streams as critical ecosystems generally, and you're also seeing a lot more wild swimming going on because of lockdown. People have not been able to go to swimming pools, so a lot more people are using the river networks to swim, and they've obviously realised there's some issues to do with it, because obviously when in large rainfall periods, the water company systems back up, and so you either flood people's homes or you allow emergency discharges, and that of course causes havoc with river systems. So that's what's a bit more in focus, and that's why you're seeing more of it, I think, because there are some campaigning groups that have picked it up and said we want the same protection as beaches.
Yeah, thank you. That makes it. I live on the coast, so yeah, we do have that, particularly with the heavy rainfall we've had. There's often warnings about the sewage overrun into the sea, and not to bathe at those particular times. But there seems to be more, as you say, then more around rivers, and possibly that is to do with more sort of wild swimming, or just sort of a greater focus on those inland waterways and less so much on the beaches. Thank you.
Great. Well, it's 5 to 12, so maybe at this point I can formally thank Begonia for your presentation and for all the discussion that's followed. In terms of the kind of seminar program we wanted to run, webinar program we wanted to run as a board for Future South, these kind of topics are very relevant, and hence the interest today has been very high. But clearly, we want to reflect the full range of the issues that the Future South as an organisation is trying to address going forward. We want to provide more of that regional identity to this part of the country, and so we would welcome your ongoing involvement, all of those that have attended today in our seminar programme going forward. You've got the links for the next one in January. Our website, again, is www.futuresouth.org. So that gives you all of our raison d'etre, who we are and what we're trying to achieve, and then gives you all the information around events coming up. Richard, did you want to say anything else at this point?
Just add my thanks to Begonia. A very interesting presentation, and thanks, Ben, for chairing.
Great. So we look forward to, I hope you'll have a great Christmas under the circumstances, and we look forward to welcoming you back for our January webinar. I keep calling it seminars, webinars in January. But thank you very much for joining us today.
Just to say, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me. And thank you for inviting me to speak today.
Thanks, Begonia.